I think I can classify Forsaken for being almost perfectly balanced when comparing the characters to one another. While I disagree with some balance changes, I think everything is generally nicely evened out to a balanced game. So it's about time I make a video on a topic I've been thinking about, the biggest counter to every Forsaken character. This is formatted in such a way where each survivor has a specific killer they need to look out for, and every killer has survivors that are just a menace to them. This is not an advice video that it might look like, it's just a fun analysis video to see some of the wildest interactions in Forsaken. And a quick note, this list isn't necessarily deciding its decisions based on how the characters play Last Man Standing, but it will sometimes be considered. Noob is one of the only two survivalists in Forsaken now, with his abilities being a burst of speed, Slate Skin, and Ghostburger. Probably the most notable one to focus on here is Slate Skin, known to being a huge counter to heavy attacks in the game, such as Spikes or Mass Infection. Except if the killer can hit you several times at once before the ability runs out, because that's right, I'm talking about Jason. Gashing Wound can be optimized to still damage around 30 to 40 damage if hit right at the end, and the survivor can do virtually nothing about it with their low speed. Jason also matches the Bloxicola ability Noob wields, being tied as the fastest killer. 007's abilities basically completely surround the clone. Interpreting which killers deal with the clones best is pretty simple too. Cool Kid literally doesn't have a direct tracking ability to identify a faker, so that could probably be immediately knocked out. Jason can only focus on one person at a time, sometimes making clones easier to fall for. John Doe and 1X are both relatively equal in being able to view everyone, but 007 can at the very least take out digital footprints with clones, and 1X's blur disability can make it easier to fall for them. But what I think pushes 1X over the edge as to being the biggest counter is his elimination for 007's teleportation with fast projectiles, plus the fact that clones can take out John's digital footprints. It's a close call between these two, but 1X's reliance on projectiles also makes clone tech less of a threat. Elliot has the lowest base HP in the game, being just 80. This leads to this character getting killed extremely quickly if not protected by others. I think in this scenario, John easily has the best time killing Elliot with spikes and footprints to isolate them from the others, and Elliot dying in just 3 hits to John even on full health. Builderman's entire character is basically surrounding the 2 buildings he makes. The sentry can be used to heavily stall the killer, which lets him and others get away easier. So who destroys the sentry the easiest? Well, Jason only has melee abilities, Cool Kid only has 1 low damage projectile, so it's down to once again John Doe and 1X. But it's a pretty quick decision to realize how good 1X is at destroying not just the sentry, but the dispenser too. 1X has 2 projectiles to choose from with quick recharges, and John Doe's melee damage doesn't outperform 1X due to Builderman having 90 health this time. Dusakar always stays very, very far away from the killer each round. It's the whole gameplay style. Because of this, it's a bit difficult to decide if any killer is really worse than another. A common strategy is to quickly turn on Dusakar if they are relatively close when protecting someone. In reflecting this, I could see maybe a Cool Kid or 1X. 1X can fake the projectile, Cool Kid can use extremely fast moving walk speed override. I can see both working here. Both give you almost 0 time to react. I think both these killers can be a sufficient counter to this really annoying support character through strategic faking. Taff was pretty easy to decide. His main strategy is setting up a fortress of traps in a particular place on the map, giving the killer a huge setback when they enter. Obviously, the main issue is that the killers can destroy these traps themselves by baiting them out with their abilities, and easily the best killer that wipes out a wave of traps between 2 different projectiles is 1X. It destroys all the tripwires and sets off the trip mine immediately with a single Mass Infection, essentially making a lot of Taff's hard work get taken out immediately. Moving on to Sentinels, Shaletsky really only has one primary ability of swiftly stunning the killer up close with no strings attached. Shed is also commonly known for his countless memes of pathetically missing his slashes, slowing him way down, making him extremely vulnerable to big damage. The killer that delivers the most punishment from a missed attack is none other than 1X once again. A common entanglement and Mass Infection combo can deal a staggering 80 damage and almost nearly wiping out the Shed for a single attack slip up. No other killer can deliver a punishment this quickly and this heavily. Guest is an interesting scenario. At first, you'd expect the same outcome as Shed, where missing a block or punch leads to high punishment, but I think the scenario is a bit different. First off, Guest has this mechanic where he can block not only to gain the punch, but to obtain the status effect to negate almost all damage, from something like Mass Infection. Also, Guest can obtain a punch from something like Jason's Gashing Wound, but in general, I think the only killer that clearly counters Guest is Cool Kid. Cool Kid has a windup of 0.2 seconds, which makes it virtually impossible to block without prediction. And missing a block comes with the punishment of a walk speed override dealing massive damage, and a possible projectile to slow you down as well. Cool Kid isn't a complete counter, but is famously known for being a horrible sight as a guest player. Now, go put aside that small detour, Chance's biggest counter is once again 1x for virtually the exact same reason. This time, Chance doesn't even need to miss the gunshot, as there's just a probability it doesn't even go off or give 1x a window to deal huge punishment damage. But for the last survivor, 2Time's new gimmick knocks out a surprising amount of killers. John can get his spikes cancelled, Cool Kid's lack of tracking abilities makes 2Time insanely hard to find, so it's down to Jason or 1x. 1x has his vision greatly blurred when tracking somebody, allowing for 2Time to be extremely hidden when this is on, but I feel like I can apply the same logic to the previous Sentinels to say 1x is the most dangerous killer to 2Time. A missed dagger swing once again just leads to huge punishment from his projectiles. No other killer can make that same effect. Now, for the killers, the logic flips. For each of the 4, I will mention which of the 10 survivalists proves to be the biggest counter. So, starting with Jason, who I think gets countered by none other than Guest. Jason is known for his huge hitboxes, which end up as a double-edged sword against the Sentinel, as the huge hitboxes, especially the behead ability, lead for a very easy parry for the Guest. Also, the Gashing Wound ability sends 5 different hits on a single player, but simply stepping into the hitbox gives you a completely free block to punish Jason with later on. You can also make the argument that Jason is huge punishment for a missed block or punch, so I can also give a mention to both Noob and 007 for also being pretty powerful against Jason for their hiding abilities. Jason can only track one player at a time, which makes this pretty inconvenient in some scenarios. Now, Cool Kid has the most ironic counter in the game. Despite all the backstory behind Cool Kid and his father 007, 07 also ends up being a complete counter to Cool Kid, especially during Last Man Standing. We all know Cool Kid for having absolutely zero tracking abilities, and this shows extremely effectively when put up against arguably the best hider in the game. The clone lets you hide from Cool Kid briefly with the chance of the clone throwing the killer off, and this can be sent to the second Last Man Standing begins, where Cool Kid literally could have no idea where you're hiding. Also, the ability to teleport using Cole's UI can be used to lose the killer even more. Oh, they can just use minions? Well, those get knocked out the second you use clone, and they immediately lose sight of where you are. Despite the tragic backstories and even the custom song between Cool Kid and vs 007 1v1, this complete counter makes it nothing less than ironic. I'll also give some points to Chance for being easily the worst Sentinel for a Cool Kid to deal with, completely wiping out the minions upon summoning along with stunning you. This scenario doesn't happen too often, but it's still worth noting. So, who counters John Doe? I mean, he's the best viewing ability in the game, traps pretty much every survivor and a relatively large range. But there's one little character who happens to be the most inconvenient, annoying, and unfortunately effective survivor against John Doe. This is none other than 2Time. 2Time's gimmicks are known to be pretty hard to pull off, but oh my goodness, I am a John Doe main and I want this survivor to die in a hole. First off, 2Time can literally hide behind your spikes. If you see a John Doe looping your spikes he just set off, just jump right around the corner, it's so easy to do. Also, the dagger can cancel spikes. Once the John is preparing a corrupt energy, you can literally get a free backstab, filling half your bar and cancel the spikes, and an easy getaway. This is absolutely crazy. But there's one more little niche mechanic that pushes me over the edge. Yeah, I've explained my point enough. I'm just trying to level up John Doe to 100, but a very particular survivor has suddenly slowed my progress down. Finally, 1x. Well, this guy is immediately known for being a Sentinel Destroyer, offering the biggest punishment out of all the killers. He destroys support characters such as Taff and Dusakar, and is a nightmare for 007. So, who's left? I think we know who's left. Guest is the saving grace against 1x. Despite still being punishable for missing blocks or punches, Guest can do a similar trick to Jason's Gashing Wound ability, gaining a free punch if 1x uses a mass infection and negating almost all damage from projectiles. It isn't anywhere near a full counter, but it's the farthest I can get with 1x. And that's a wrap. The biggest counter to every Forsaken survivor. I'd like to remind you that this is not an advice video, it's simply just an analysis of some pretty cool character interactions that could end up in Forsaken. For some stats, 1x ended up countering a whopping 7 out of the 10 of survivalists. No, this does not make him the best killer unless you think he is, but it is definitely an interesting stat. Regarding the killers, Guest seems like a majority best counter of several of them, alongside 007 seemingly being a good counter to Jason and especially Cool Kid. But in general, this video wasn't supposed to highlight the best and worst characters, nor be a Forsaken advice video, but I hope you enjoyed nonetheless.